Hey guys, it's Dani. I cannot wait to do this VR. So this is going to be a VR to Dawn Michelle at Boho Tarot, who did books and tarot. Oh my god, I was so excited to see this and the way that she did it and like all of her choices that I was like, I have to do this tag. Let me tell you a little secret before we begin, though. I had such a hard time finding decks that correspond with the books that I've been reading and that I read in general because they're so dark and they're so like thriller, true crime-ish. I'm sorry, the moment I get on this thing, I won't hear from anybody all day. But I go to film and like everybody knows it's like bing 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 bing. So I'm sorry. Everything I read is so dark. I'm like I have something that's kind of like that, but like I don't have anything like that dark. Like so many of the books that I read have this like atmosphere of like, y'all know new movies, how everything is like what's going on because it's so dark and like deep colors and everything is happening in these like candle lit, natural like peek through lighting, and it's gritty and raw, but it's also like a lot of like fantasy, but like I don't have anything that really equates to that in that same way. So it was difficult to like piece together the books and the decks. I thought it was going to be so easy because like a few things popped right into my mind. But it was hard because I was like, I don't have anything that feels like that. That's like dark enough for this. So I hope you like my choices. So I only did, let's see, 1, 2, 3. I did 4 fiction and I have 1 bonus non-fiction because I've been using these two actually together recently because I'm rereading it and I wanted to share because I think it fits perfectly. So that's what we're gonna do. Okay, let's go. So hold on to your butts. We're starting hard. Okay, so this is the first combination that I thought of when I saw this tag. And that is Stephen King's Desperation and the Hayworth Tarot. Let's get a little synopsis, shall we? Here are the backs. Nevada is mostly a long stretch of desert you cross on the way to somewhere else. And with someone else if you're lucky, because it's a scary place. Headed down Route 50 in the brutal summer heat are people who are never going to reach their destinations. A dead cat nailed to the road sign heralds the little mining town of Desperation, a town that seems withered in the shade of a man-made mountain known as the China Pit. But it's worse than that. Much worse. So I'm not going to read the whole thing because that's like little tidbits of it. So I am going to read a little excerpt from this book as I show you the cards, and then we'll talk about it a little bit. Chapter 1. Oh, Jesus, gross. What, Mary, what? Didn't you see it? See what? She looked at him, and in the harsh desert sunlight, he saw that a lot of the color had gone out of her face, leaving just the marks of sunburn on her cheeks and across her brow, where not even a strong sunblock cream would entirely protect her. She was very fair and burned easily. On that sign! That speed limit sign! What about it? There was a dead cat on it, Peter. Nailed there or glued there or some damn thing. He hit the brake pedal. She grabbed his shoulder at once. Don't you even think about going back. But what? Do you want to take a picture of it? No way, Jose. If I have to look at that thing again, I'll throw up. Was it a white cat? He could see the back of the sign in the rearview mirror. The speed limit sign she was talking about, presumably. So this book and this deck really embody that same kind of like creepy desert-like space, but also like just the uncanny and unnerving things that are going on and what our characters kind of deal with and what they find there. And I just thought that this was the perfect pair for this book and this deck. I feel like if I were to reread it, I would want to do readings for our characters and for different situations when it comes to this. I thought that this really embodied not only the feel, but the look as well. Like things that I would expect to see in Desperation. Because it is such a desolate desert town. You know what I mean? Up next, we have Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell by Susanna Clarke and the Tyldwick Tarot. So, let's take a look at what it says on the back here. At the dawn of the 19th century, two very different magicians emerged to change England's history. In the year 1806, with the Napoleonic Wars raging on land and sea, most people believed magic to be long dead in England, until the reclusive Mr. Norrell reveals his powers and becomes a celebrity overnight. Soon, another practicing magician comes forth, the young, handsome, and daring Jonathan Strange. He becomes Norrell's student, and they join forces in the war against France. But Strange is increasingly drawn to the wildest, most perilous forms of magic, straining his partnership with Norrell, and putting at risk everything else he holds dear. So good. I loved this book so much. So let's take a quick read as we go through this deck. The Library at Hertview, autumn 1806 to January 1807. Some years ago, there was in the city of York a society of magicians. They met upon the third Wednesday of every month and read each other long, dull papers upon the history of English magic. They were gentlemen magicians, which is to say they had never harmed anyone by magic, nor ever done anyone the slightest good. In fact, to own the truth, not one of these magicians had ever cast the smallest spell, nor by magic caused one leaf to tremble upon a tree, made one mote of dust to alter its course, or changed a single hair upon any one's head. But this was one minor reservation. They enjoyed a reputation as some of the wisest and most magical gentlemen in Yorkshire. So, this deck reminds me of this novel in the sense of the atmosphere. So there is that kind of rusticness. It feels a little 1800s, you know. It also has this elegance about it, but also this kind of hidden realm, which we see in this book when they talk about the world of the Fae. So they do talk about this fairy world that people go to in their dreams, right? Or nightmares or waking deals. I'm not going to ruin it for you. But this has that kind of feel to it where you're not sure if you're awake or if you're dreaming, if you're in the real world or in some other realm. And I really felt like this embodied the grunginess that this book brings, as well as the otherworldliness that it brings, but all kind of set in familiar looking spaces. This obviously is a very long book, but you can also watch the little mini series they did on the BBC. It used to be on Netflix, don't quote me, but you'll also get a good feel for it. I don't know why this book excited me so much. Like, I've heard a lot of people think that it's a little dull, but I don't know. It really invigorated me. And so I thought these two were the perfect match. So I don't have this book with me, but I'll put a picture of it right here. I read this from the library. So I will go ahead and read a bit of a synopsis as well as the first couple paragraphs of one of the stories of this book, and we will talk about this deck. So this is Tales from the Hinterland by Melissa Albert. The back says, before the Hazelwood, there was Tales from the Hinterland. Journey into the Hinterland, a brutal and beautiful world where a young woman spends a night with death, brides are wed to a mysterious house in the trees, and an enchantress is killed twice and still lives. Here's an excerpt from The Door That Wasn't There. There was once a rich merchant who lived at the edge of the woods in a tiny town in the hinterland. Though he spent most of his days traveling, he was home long enough to give his wife 2 daughters, the eldest dark and the youngest golden, born 1 year apart. Their father was distant and their mother was strange, often shutting herself in her room for hours. Her daughters could hear her speaking to someone when they pressed their ears to the door, but only the eldest, Anya, ever made out an answer. The voice he heard was so thin and rustling, she almost believed it was leaves against the window. On a winter's day when Anya was 16, their mother locked their door and didn't open it again. After 3 days, the servant broke it down and found an empty room. The windows were shut. Winter howled outside and the woman was gone. But she'd left something behind on the floor. In a puddle of blood, a bone dagger. Now, this deck is probably the closest I could get to the darkness and the uncomfortable feeling of the Tales from the Hinterland. I loved the stories in this book. I did like the other 2 books that mentioned this book, which is, oh my gosh, the Hazelwood and the Night Country, which reference this book itself. These are the actual dark fairy tales. And so I thought, you know what? The Darkwood is probably the closest that I can find. But even then, there are some faces in here that are a little too nice and too kind. But then you see some kind of tragedies happening throughout and this kind of uneasiness. So I thought that this would probably be one of the best in my collection to go with these dark fairy tales. By far, some of the best short tales that I've read in a long time. I honestly fell in love with this book and will be adding it to my collection, will be purchasing, because I enjoyed it that much. This is something that I feel like I want to read over and over again. And so I thought the Dark Woods with its pointy edges and the glow of some of these and just the depth that some of these cards have, I thought would be probably the best to show this kind of world. So the next book I also don't have. I read it from the library, and that is Pearl. So Pearl, I thought, while way more sinister and creepy, I did think that the Terror of the Magical Forest really lends itself to Pearl. And I'll explain a little more after I read the synopsis and a couple paragraphs from Pearl. So the back reads, there's something strange about Walter Koppel's farm. At first it seems to be his grandson who cruelly murders one of Walter's pigs in an act of seemingly senseless violence. But then people in town begin to whisper that Walter's grandson heard a voice commanding him to kill, and that the voice belongs to the most peculiar creature, a pig named Pearl. Walter's not sure what to believe. He knows he's always been afraid of the strangely malevolent Pearl, but as madness and paranoia grip the town and the townspeople descend on Walter's farm with violent wrath, they begin to discover that true evil wears a human face. From Chapter 2. It had been a hard summer. Stuff it in the mind bag. Yes, the mind bag. The secret unseen place where Sherry stuffed all her dark thoughts, her absurd worries, the unprovoked hunches she'd felt most of her life, the premonitions of Pearl. Grandpa squinted down at his grandsons. I was hoping Aaron could collect some eggs for me, and maybe Jeff would like to feed the... Jeff held his breath. Don't say feed the pigs, Grandpa. Don't say Pearl. Horses. How's that sound, boys? Grandpa asked. Good enough? The brothers nodded. Grandpa walked them back into the farmhouse through the kitchen to the back door, but Jeff paused at the screen, looking down the slope to the evergreens that hid the pig pen. Grandpa led them to the stables, and on the way, Jeff heard them breathing behind the trees. The pigs. So when it comes to Pearl, obviously, just by the creepiness that I'm sure you could feel from these paragraphs, this bad boy, this one right here, reminds me of Pearl. It is far more creepy than the magical forest, but the way that the eyes are kind of big and the way that it's kind of set, where it's not all super cute and fuzzy, there is a little bit of oddness to this deck. I felt like it was probably the best to describe Pearl that I had. Again, I don't have decks as malicious, as creepy as XYZ as some of the stories that I read. But because of the pigs in this deck, it definitely did remind me of Pearl. And in this book, Pearl kind of takes over people's minds and other animals' minds. And so I feel like because of their blank stares and the way that their eyes are, it does kind of give me that feeling where they may be under the influence of someone else. That someone else may be pulling their strings and making them act accordingly. I mean, look at this moon. Look at the eye there. So this definitely still feels, I mean, hello, like Pearl to me. This is definitely a strange book. I left it feeling like I wasn't sure if I really liked it or really didn't. But it was definitely an interesting read. So this is the one that I chose to go with Pearl. So last, but certainly not least, is The Self-Worth Path by our own Lisa Pepez and the Self-Love Tarot. So on the back it says, can you imagine what your life would look like if you could meet yourself with compassion every single day? Accept your body, maybe even grow to love it exactly as it is. Prioritize yourself and your needs without feeling selfish. Leverage the pain of your past into the power of your present. Create the lasting change in your patterns of behavior and in your life. Soften into vulnerability while confidently holding your boundaries. Live a bold, authentic, and empowered life in spite of your fear. You may not know it yet, but the real power of the self-worth path is already within you. All you have to do is take the first step. So beautiful. So let's take a look at this Self-Worth Tarot as I read a passage from this book. Meet yourself where you are. For many years, I felt well and truly broken. That was actually the language I used with my closest friends and loved ones. I'm broken. It took me years to believe that while my experiences from childhood through young adulthood had a significant impact on how I moved through the world, they did not have to define who I am. I am not broken. My wife, Peggy, who you'll hear about at several points throughout this book, was the first person to tell me I wasn't broken. In fact, rather than just comforting me when I'd expressed distress over my dysfunctions I so badly wanted to overcome, she'd give me a much-needed reality check. One day, she said something so profound that it stuck with me ever since. It's not your fault, but it is your problem. The dysfunction that surrounded me when I was growing up was not my fault. The abuse I experienced was not my fault. The traumas I endured were not my fault, but they are my problem. They've shaped how I view and interact with the world. The power I let them have over me and the way I choose to move through life is absolutely up to me. I gave up my power as a child. It wasn't until my 30s that I finally took it back. So this deck was gifted to me. I had looked at it for quite a while and I was like, I just don't know. But I got it in and I flipped through it on my own and I was like, this is really cute. I don't know if I'm going to use it. So I started kind of being drawn towards it. So I was like, you know what? Let me try. So I read for myself. And then I started reading for other people with this, some of my clients, some of my friends, and I can't tell you how instantly I fell in love once I started reading with this. And so it really, I don't know, it opens up a lot of doors. There's a lot of like freeing images. Nothing is too crowded. even though there's a lot of color, it is very meditative in many different ways. And I have found myself really drawn to it as I'm rereading The Self-Worth Path. And I just feel like it's a good companion to a lot of self-help books, as well as maybe like some self-worth and self-love stuff. I don't know. It really does. It sings to me, if you will. I feel like it is a softer companion to the Reclaim Oracle when it comes to like a tarot and oracle to kind of pair together for self-love. I feel like if you want something a little softer with something a little more harsh, and I say harsh very, well, I mean, I was going to say very lightly, but not really. There's a lot of hard-hitting stuff in Reclaim Oracle, but they balance each other very well. So you can take the difficult and really expand upon it in a neutral to lighter way, if that makes any sense. Those are the backs that I just, put on top of there. So anyway, this was my little bonus nonfiction that I've really been working through. And again, this is a deck that I never thought I wanted. I never knew that I needed, but has become a really, really wonderful part of not only my practice, but when I'm doing certain readings for clients. So a nice surprise. So anyway, you guys, those are all of my books and tarot. Thanks for watching, you guys. I hope that you enjoyed the look at these books and tarot. I was incredibly inspired by this. So, not only have I done this, but I want to go back and look for, like, movies and tarot. I think I'm going to do that. Let me know if that's something you want to see down below. I think I'm going to start piecing those together. Maybe do 5 or 6. I think I can manage that a little better than I can with my dark-ass books. So, I mean, sometimes it's not much better. But I'm definitely going to put that together. I think that would be a hell of a lot of fun. I like a little more fantasy and spooky tales, so maybe I can put those together a little better. Anyway, thank you guys for watching. If you were looking for any of the things that I mentioned, down below is going to be any links that I can provide, as well as a link to my Amazon, which has all of the things that I'll talk about. If you can find it on Amazon, it's going to be on that list. I just felt like it was a lot easier. That way you can like browse through and find everything. So I just created a little list, an idea form or whatever it's called, and I dumped everything on there. So anything that I talk about is going to be on there, but anything that can be found on Amazon, you'll find it here, especially all the books. Yeah. Also, there's 3 Fat Readers and Instagram, and y'all know. And if you're interested in joining the Mystic fam, that's going to be down below as well. We do some extra videos, some live chats and stuff on there. We's having a good time. Anyway, I will talk to you all very soon, and I'm sending you all my love. Mwah! Later, Gators.